December 17, 1944. The skies over Mindoro, Philippines. Major Richard Bong scanned the horizon through his P-38 Lightning's canopy, his eyes tracking every movement in the tropical sky. Below him, American forces were consolidating their hold on newly captured airfields. Above him, somewhere in those clouds, Japanese fighters prowled for opportunities. This would be his last hunt. What the Japanese pilots couldn't know, what nobody knew that morning, was that they were about to witness aviation history. The farm boy from Wisconsin was 1 kill away from a record that would stand forever. One more victory would make it 40. 40 confirmed kills, a number no American pilot would ever surpass. But to understand how this moment arrived, we need to go back to where it all began. September 24, 1920. Superior, Wisconsin. Richard Ira Bong entered the world as the eldest of 9 children born to Swedish immigrant parents Carl and Dora Bong. The family farm in Poplar offered nothing glamorous, just hard work, discipline, and the values of immigrant determination. Young Dick Bong's destiny was written in the sky in 1928 when he was just 8 years old. President Calvin Coolidge spent his summer vacation in Superior, and the mail planes serving the presidential vacation home flew directly over the Bong farm. I knew then I wanted to be a pilot. Bong would later write to his family. I built model airplanes from scrap wood and paper. Flying wasn't a dream. It was destiny. But destiny required more than dreams. Bong excelled academically, graduating 10th in his class of 428 students. He played baseball, basketball, and hockey. He sang in the church choir. And critically, he hunted in Wisconsin's forests, developing marksmanship skills that would later prove deadly at 20,000 feet. In 1938, Bong enrolled at Superior State Teachers College planning to become an engineer. But aviation called stronger. He joined the civilian pilot training program, soloing on his 20th birthday in a Piper Cub. His instructors noticed something immediately: situational awareness. That rare ability to track multiple aircraft, calculate angles and speeds, and make split-second decisions under extreme stress. May 29, 1941. 6 months before Pearl Harbor, Bong enlisted in the Army Air Corps Aviation Cadet Program. One of his gunnery instructors was Captain Barry Goldwater, who decades later would remember. He was the finest natural pilot I ever met. In gunnery training, he could put rounds on target with precision that exceeded our best instructors. January 9, 1942. 1 month after Pearl Harbor, Second Lieutenant Richard Ira Bong received his pilot wings and commission. His dream of flying was reality. But instead of combat, his exceptional gunnery scores earned him a posting as instructor at Luke Field, Arizona. For months, Bong trained other pilots while the war raged across the Pacific. The frustration was intense, but the experience would prove invaluable. Teaching others forced him to articulate tactics that came naturally to him. Then came May 1942. Orders to Hamilton Field, California to train on the Lockheed P-38 Lightning. This twin-engine fighter with its distinctive twin-boom design was unlike anything most pilots had flown. Powered by 2 Allison V-1710 engines producing 1,425 horsepower each, the Lightning could reach 414 miles per hour at 25,000 feet. Armed with one 20mm cannon and 4.50 caliber machine guns, all nose-mounted. The P-38 delivered devastating concentrated firepower. But the Lightning was complex and unforgiving. Many pilots feared it. Bong loved it. He understood that the P-38's speed, climb rate, and long range made it the perfect weapon for Pacific combat where engagements occurred over vast ocean distances. At Hamilton Field, Bong's natural flying ability manifested in ways that both impressed and alarmed his commanders. On June 12, 1942, he buzzed his fellow pilot's house so low the propeller wash scattered debris across the yard. He flew down Market Street in San Francisco at rooftop level and blew clothes off a woman's clothesline in Oakland. General George C. Kenney personally reprimanded him. "If you didn't want to fly down Market Street, I wouldn't have you in my Air Force. But you are not to do it anymore, and I mean what I say." Despite the stern words, Kenney recognized something special. "We need kids like this," he would later write. Aggressive, fearless, skilled. The kind of pilot who would press the attack when others turned away. When General Douglas MacArthur selected Kenney to lead the 5th Air Force in the South Pacific, Kenny handpicked 50 of the best P-38 pilots he knew. Bong was one of them. September 1942. The general and the farm boy arrived in Australia. The Pacific War was about to gain its most deadly aerial predator. December 27, 1942. Port Moresby, New Guinea. Second Lieutenant Richard Bong climbed into his P-38 Lightning for his first combat mission. Through the plexiglass canopy, he watched as 40 Japanese aircraft materialized from the clouds. Bombers escorted by the legendary Mitsubishi A-6M0 fighters that had terrorized Allied pilots across the Pacific. 12 American P-38s against 40 Japanese aircraft. The mathematics were brutal. Bong was assigned to fly with Captain Thomas Lynch, one of the Pacific's rising aces. Lynch understood what many American pilots had died learning. You could not dogfight Zeros on equal terms. The Zero could outturn any Allied fighter at low to medium altitudes. Lynch taught Bong the tactics that would define his career. Never attempt to turn fight a Zero. Use altitude advantage to initiate attacks. Dive at high speed. Deliver a concentrated burst of fire. Then extend away using superior speed. If the first pass fails, climb back to altitude and reset. Bong absorbed these lessons and added his own innovations. He calculated deflection angles, lead distances, and closure rates with mathematical precision. When the 40 Japanese aircraft attacked Allied positions at Buna, the 12 P-38s scrambled to intercept. The odds were more than 3-1. Most pilots would have exercised caution. Bong saw opportunity. Flying alongside Lynch, he positioned himself above the Japanese formation and dove into the attack with throttles wide open. His first target was a Zero attempting to engage Lynch's aircraft. Bong side-slipped, aligned his nose-mounted guns, and fired a short burst at close range. The Zero disintegrated in midair. Want to hear more incredible stories from World War II? Drop a comment below and tell us where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe. We're bringing you the untold stories of history's greatest warriors. 3 more Zeros converged on Bong's position. He dove toward the jungle canopy, the pursuing fighters following. At what he later described as 2 inches above the shortest tree in Buna, Bong pulled out of his dive. The sudden maneuver loaded his airframe with tremendous G-forces, but the P-38's sturdy construction held. 2 of the pursuing Zeros couldn't match the maneuver and crashed into the jungle. But Bong wasn't finished. As he leveled out just above treetop height, he spotted a D-3A Val dive bomber pulling out of its attack run. The bomber was vulnerable, slow, loaded with ordnance. Bong closed to point-blank range and fired. The Val exploded in a massive fireball. That single combat produced 2 confirmed kills and earned Bong the Silver Star. But the real victory was psychological. Japanese pilots who survived the engagement reported encountering an American pilot whose skill matched or exceeded their best aces. The reports were initially dismissed as combat exaggeration. They were not. Over the next 2 weeks, Bong demonstrated that his first combat success was no fluke. January 7, 1943. Allied coast watchers reported a Japanese convoy moving along the south shore of New Britain. 48 American fighters scrambled to attack. Bong and his flight missed the initial rendezvous, but ran directly into the convoy's air umbrella, Nakajima Key, 43 Oscar fighters. The engagement lasted nearly 4 hours across 2 separate battles. In the first encounter, Bong engaged an Oscar in a 5-minute duel that showcased his tactical discipline. He refused to turn fight, instead using vertical maneuvers and speed to maintain advantage. When the Oscar pilot made a critical error, turning into Bong's pursuit instead of away, Bong closed to 50 yards and fired. The Oscar disintegrated. The next day, January 8, 1943, provided the engagement that officially made Bong an ace. While escorting bombers, 8 P-38s encountered approximately 20 Japanese fighters. The Japanese had numerical advantage and altitude. Standard doctrine suggested withdrawing. Bong and his squadron mates attacked anyway. In the swirling dogfight that followed, Bong shot down one fighter with a long burst from 200 yards, a difficult deflection shot that required precise lead calculations while both aircraft maneuvered violently. This kill, his 5th confirmed victory, earned Bong the designation of Fighter Ace and the Distinguished Flying Cross. By April 1943, just 4 months into combat, Bong had shot down 10 Japanese aircraft, becoming a double ace. His reputation was growing not just among Americans, but among Japanese pilots who increasingly reported encounters with a twin-boom fighter flown by a pilot of exceptional skill. Between combat missions, Bong became a teacher. He taught newly arrived pilots to respect the Zero's capabilities without fearing them. He taught them to use their aircraft's strengths while avoiding its weaknesses. His teaching methods were practical and direct. He would demonstrate proper attack sequences. Climb above the target. Position yourself so the sun is behind you. Dive at full throttle. Fire a short burst, no more than 3 seconds. When you pass through the target's altitude, keep diving. Use your speed to climb back up and reset for another attack. Never, under any circumstances, slow down and turn fight. This was the engagement that would transform Bong from skilled ace to legendary fighter pilot. That morning, Bong led a flight of 10 P-38s on a sweep north of La when he spotted a Japanese formation of approximately 20 aircraft. The smart tactical move would be to radio for reinforcements and maintain altitude advantage. Bong didn't make the smart tactical move. He immediately led 3 successive attacks into the enemy formation. On his first pass, Bong destroyed 2 Japanese fighters with short, accurate bursts of fire. As he climbed back to altitude, 15 additional Japanese fighters arrived to reinforce the engagement. The odds were now more than 3-1 against the Americans. Most squadron leaders would have ordered withdrawal. Bong, disregarding the overwhelming enemy numbers, fearlessly led his flight back into the engagement. What followed was a masterclass in aerial combat. Bong destroyed 2 more aircraft in the second engagement, giving him 4 kills in a single mission. The engagement ended with 10 Japanese aircraft destroyed, 4 by Bong personally, with 0 American losses. For this action, Bong received the Distinguished Service Cross, the Army's second highest decoration for valor. But the statistics alone cannot capture the psychological impact on Japanese pilots. Lieutenant Kenji Okamoto, a Zero pilot who survived the engagement, wrote in his diary that evening, words not discovered until Japanese military archives were opened decades later. We encountered the American twin-boom fighter flown by the pilot our intelligence calls the Ghost. He attacks from impossible angles with perfect precision. Our formation leaders now warn us specifically about this pilot. They say if you see the twin-boom fighter with red-painted wing tips and nose, disengage immediately. But disengagement is not always possible. The Ghost chooses when and where to fight. We can only react. By August 1943, Bong had achieved 15 confirmed kills and received promotion to captain. His fame was spreading through American newspapers hungry for heroes. But Bong remained remarkably modest. In letters to his family, he downplayed his achievements. I am doing my job like every other pilot out here. The P-38 is a magnificent aircraft. The real heroes are the ground crews who keep these planes flying in impossible conditions. This humility masked lethal effectiveness born from careful analysis. After every mission, Bong debriefed thoroughly. He studied gun camera footage frame by frame, not to celebrate victories, but to identify what he could improve. He noted that his best kills came when he closed to within 100 yards or less, sometimes as close as 50 yards. At that range, even brief bursts found their mark. He calculated that he averaged only 2 to 3 seconds of firing per kill, a testament to accuracy achieved through proper positioning. What separated Bong from other skilled pilots was his refusal to take unnecessary risks. He never chased damaged aircraft deep into enemy territory. He never allowed victory fever to override tactical judgment. His squadron mates noticed something else. Bong never lost a wingman. In the brutal mathematics of aerial combat, where many aces accumulated kills while their wingmen died protecting them, Bong's record was remarkable. He treated his wingmen as partners, not as expendable shields. November 1943. General Kenny ordered Bong back to the United States for 60 days leave. The general's reasoning was strategic. Bong needed rest, and his combat experience was invaluable for training replacement pilots. But there was another reason, though Kenny never stated it officially. Losing Bong in combat would be devastating to American morale. During his leave, Bong visited Superior State Teachers College for a homecoming event. There he met Marjorie Vitendel, a beautiful and intelligent student who would transform his life in ways combat never could. The two began dating immediately. And when Bong returned to the Pacific in January 1944, he carried something precious, a large photograph of Marge that he mounted on the nose of his P-38 Lightning. The aircraft was now named Marge in her honor. Unlike other pilots who adorned their aircraft with provocative nose art, Bong chose a respectful photograph of his girlfriend. The red-painted wing tips and propeller spinners remained distinctive markings that Japanese pilots had learned to recognize and fear. By April 1944, Bong had achieved 27 confirmed victories, surpassing Captain Eddie Rickenbacker's World War I record of 26 kills. Rickenbacker sent Bong a personal letter. "You have achieved what I always hoped another American pilot would accomplish. You have become the best of the best." The national press seized on Bong's achievement. Newspapers proclaimed him America's greatest fighter ace. Life magazine featured him. Radio programs broadcast interviews. The War Department promoted Bong to major and sent him on a 15-state war bond tour. For 2 months, Bong visited training bases, gave speeches, and helped sell millions of dollars in war bonds. He spoke at aircraft factories, visited hospitals, appeared at civic events. He hated every minute of it. In letters to Marge, Bong expressed his frustration. "I am not comfortable with attention and speeches. I belong in a cockpit, not on a stage. My squadron mates are still fighting while I tour the country." But the tour served its purpose. War bond sales surged wherever Bong appeared. Young men enlisted inspired by his example. Workers increased production knowing that pilots like Bong depended on their efforts. September 1944. Bong returned to the Pacific, and General Kinney assigned him to 5th Air Force Headquarters as an advanced gunnery instructor. The orders explicitly stated that Bong was permitted to fly missions, but not to actively seek combat. Bong found the loophole immediately. The orders said he couldn't seek combat. They didn't say he couldn't engage if combat found him. Flying from Tacloban on Leyte during the Philippines campaign, Bong managed to be in exactly the right place whenever Japanese aircraft appeared. His victory total climbed steadily. 28 kills, 30 kills, 35 kills. The Philippines campaign of late 1944 provided target-rich environments. Japanese air power, though greatly diminished from its 1942 strength, still mounted fierce resistance to MacArthur's return. Kamikaze attacks were beginning, desperate suicide missions that offered opportunities for fighter pilots like Bong, who could intercept the attackers before they reached the fleet. Each engagement was documented, filmed by gun cameras, and verified by multiple witnesses. Every kill was legitimate. Bong's gun camera footage showed a consistent pattern: brief bursts of fire, typically 2 to 3 seconds. Targets at close range, often less than 100 yards. Immediate disengagement after firing, using speed to escape before other enemy fighters could react. It was methodology applied to chaos. As his total climbed toward 40, speculation grew about when he would be ordered home permanently. General Kinney walked a fine line. He wanted Bong to break records and boost morale, but he didn't want to lose America's greatest ace to a lucky enemy shot. December 12, 1944. General Douglas MacArthur personally presented Bong with the Medal of Honor at Tacloban Airfield on Leyte. MacArthur, known for dramatic speeches, spoke from the heart. "Major Richard Ira Bong, who has ruled the air from New Guinea to the Philippines, I now induct you into the society of the bravest of the brave, the wearers of the Congressional Medal of Honor of the United States." The ceremony was filmed and shown in newsreels across America. The modest pilot stood at attention, visibly uncomfortable, as MacArthur pinned the Medal of Honor on his uniform. Behind the scenes, both MacArthur and Kinney agreed Bong had done enough. With 40 kills and the Medal of Honor, he would be sent home permanently before combat could claim him. But first, there was one more mission. December 17, 1944. The skies over Mindoro, Philippines. 5 days after receiving the Medal of Honor, Major Richard Bong climbed into his P-38 Lightning for what would be his final combat mission. Allied intelligence reported Japanese fighters operating in the area. American bombers needed escort. Bong's orders were clear: fly the mission, but don't take unnecessary risks. For a pilot with 39 confirmed kills, every risk seemed necessary. The morning patrol was routine at first. Bong and his flight maintained altitude, scanning the skies for threats. The tropical sun climbed higher, heat building in the cockpit despite the altitude. Then the call came over the radio. Japanese fighters, incoming from the north. Bong's heart rate didn't increase. His hands didn't shake. After 3 years of combat, this was simply what he did. He positioned his P-38 for an attack run, checking his instruments, his ammunition, his wingman's positions. Below him, a formation of Japanese fighters approached the American bombers. They were Ki-43 Oscars, nimble, dangerous, but no match for AP-38 flown by the deadliest pilot in the Pacific. Bong Dove. The attack was textbook perfect. Everything he had learned, everything he had taught others, compressed into seconds of violent action. He positioned the sun behind him, blinding the enemy. He calculated the deflection angle, the closure rate, the precise moment to fire. At 100 yards, Bong's fingers squeezed the trigger. The P-38's guns roared. 120mm cannon and 4.50 caliber machine guns concentrating their fire on a single target. The Oscar erupted in flames. Bong didn't watch it fall. He was already diving away, using his speed to escape before the other Japanese fighters could react. He climbed back to altitude, scanning for threats, ready for another pass if needed. But the Japanese formation was breaking apart, scattering in the face of the P-38's attack. The engagement was over in minutes. Gun camera footage would later confirm the kill. Aircraft number 40, a record that would stand for 80 years and counting. Bong landed at Tacloban, shut down his engines, and climbed out of the cockpit. Ground crews congratulated him. His squadron mates slapped his back. Intelligence officers wanted to debrief. To Bong, it was just another mission. Just another job done. But everyone else knew. They had witnessed history. The kid from Wisconsin had just set a record no American pilot would ever break. January 1945. Major Richard Bong returned to the United States as America's most celebrated fighter pilot. On February 10, 1945, Richard Bong and Marjorie Vitindel were married in Superior, Wisconsin. The wedding was front-page news across the nation. Hundreds of well-wishers attended. The ceremony took place at Concordia Lutheran Church. Marge in a traditional white gown, Dick in his Army Air Forces dress uniform with his Medal of Honor prominently displayed. For Bong, who had spent 3 years in combat, the wedding represented normalcy, peace, and a future beyond war. The couple honeymooned in California, where Bong had accepted a position as test pilot for Lockheed Aircraft Corporation. His combat experience made him invaluable for evaluating new fighter designs, specifically the Lockheed P-80 Shooting Star, America's first operational jet fighter. It seemed the perfect assignment. Test flying offered challenge and excitement without the mortal danger of combat. He could build a life with Marge while contributing to aviation advancement. But jet aircraft in 1945 were experimental and dangerous. August 6, 1945, the morning that would change everything. Bong reported to Lockheed's Burbank facility for a routine acceptance flight of P-80 tail number 44 to 85,048. He had accumulated just over 4 hours of flight time in the P-80 across 12 flights. The pre-flight inspection revealed nothing unusual. Bong started the single Allison J-33 turbojet engine normally. He taxied to runway 15 and received clearance for takeoff at 2:30 p.m. Witnesses watched as the sleek jet began its takeoff roll. The acceleration was impressive. Bong lifted off smoothly and began climbing. At approximately 300 feet altitude, witnesses noticed puffs of black smoke from the engine. The aircraft began rolling to the right, then leveled momentarily. The canopy separated and tumbled away. Bong had initiated ejection procedures. Then the engine failed completely. The P-80 pitched nose down. Bong ejected clear of the aircraft, but his altitude was critically low, perhaps 200 feet. The parachute deployed, its canopy snapping open. There wasn't enough time. Bong struck the ground at high velocity at the intersection of Oxnard Street and Satsuma Avenue in Burbank. The P-80 impacted seconds later, fuel exploding on impact. Emergency crews reached Bong within minutes. He had died instantly. The investigation later determined that the primary fuel pump had malfunctioned during takeoff. A backup auxiliary pump was available, but had to be manually activated by a switch on the cockpit's left console. A switch Bong either forgot to activate or couldn't reach before ejecting. The news of Bong's death reached the public on August 7, 1945. Newspapers across America placed the announcement prominently, many directly below headlines about the atomic bombing of Hiroshima the previous day. The cruel irony was inescapable. Major Richard Ira Bong survived 3 years of combat against the Japanese Imperial Air Force. He flew more than 200 missions, engaged in hundreds of aerial battles, and emerged unscathed. Then he died testing an American aircraft in California on the same day the atomic bomb heralded the end of the war he had fought so hard to win. Major Richard Ira Bong was 24 years old when he died. He had been married less than 6 months. His life with Marge was just beginning. But in his brief time, he changed aerial warfare forever. The tactics Bong pioneered became standard curriculum at fighter pilot training schools. The techniques he developed, energy management, altitude advantage, boom and zoom attacks, close-range firing, became doctrine taught to every American fighter pilot for decades. He proved that American pilots, properly trained and equipped, could defeat the best Japan offered. His decorations reflected his extraordinary achievements: the Medal of Honor, the Distinguished Service Cross, 2 Silver Stars, 7 Distinguished Flying Crosses, 15 Air Medals, 27 medals for valor and achievement. Yet those who knew him reported that his favorite phrase remained simple: "We are just doing our job." In the 79 years since Bong's death, his record of 40 victories remains unbroken by any American pilot. This isn't for lack of opportunity. American pilots fought in Korea, Vietnam, the Gulf War, and numerous other conflicts. But the nature of aerial warfare changed. Jet aircraft made engagements faster and shorter. Missiles replaced guns as primary weapons. Air superiority was often achieved quickly, limiting opportunities for pilots to accumulate high victory totals. Bong's record stands as a monument to a specific time and style of warfare that has passed into history. Saburo Sakai, Japan's legendary ace who survived the war with 64 confirmed kills, spoke about American pilots in post-war interviews. His assessment was brutally honest. The P-38 would patrol above the altitude at which the Zero could fly. Their great speed at high altitudes allowed them to maneuver into the most advantageous positions. Then the big fighters would plunge from the sky to smash into the hapless Zero fighters. The P-38 destroyed the morale of the Zero fighter pilot. In May 2024, nearly 80 years after Bong's final combat mission, a joint expedition discovered wreckage in a ravine in Papua New Guinea's Madong province. 2 engines, partially buried in soil, with red paint still visible on the propeller spinners. They had found Marge, Bong's namesake P-38 that crashed in March 1944. Bong's 99-year-old sister, Jerry Feelcott, expressed happiness at the discovery. After 8 decades, another piece of her brother's story had come home. December 17, 1944. The day Major Richard Ira Bong shot down his 40th and final enemy aircraft over the Philippines. It wasn't the most dramatic engagement of his career. It wasn't the longest dogfight or the closest call. It was simply another mission, another job done with the precision and discipline that defined everything Bong did. But it was the mission that cemented his place in history as America's deadliest fighter pilot, a record that has stood for 79 years and will likely stand forever. The farm boy from Wisconsin who dreamed of flying had become the ghost, the pilot Japanese aviators feared above all others. The ace of aces, the best of the best. Richard Bong flew his last combat mission on December 17, 1944. He died testing an experimental jet fighter on August 6, 1945. He lived only 24 years, was married for less than 6 months, and experienced combat for less than 3 years. Yet in that brief time, he changed aerial warfare, influenced tactical doctrine, inspired generations of fighter pilots, and became a permanent part of American military history. His true achievement was greater than 40 victories. He demonstrated that analytical thinking and tactical discipline trumped raw aggression. He showed that technology meant nothing without skilled operators. He established standards of excellence that inspire still. Major Richard Ira Bong. 40 confirmed aerial victories. America's ace of aces. The pilot who ruled the skies from New Guinea to the Philippines. If you enjoyed this story of one of history's greatest pilots, please like this video and subscribe to our channel. We're uncovering more untold stories from World War II and beyond. Drop a comment and let us know what other legendary warriors should we cover next. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.